So here's something that's been kind of like messing with my brain lately. I've spent the last few years trying to consume as much knowledge as possible. Books, podcasts, YouTube videos, highlight reels of people doing impressive stuff, you name it, I've probably looked into it. Heck, even textbooks. I've started reading textbooks to try to get as much as I possibly can. But recently, I kind of stumbled onto this video by Justin Sung, and it kind of flipped something in my head about how I approach learning and reading especially. He introduced this kind of simple idea. There are two parts of reading. And since I enjoy reading and it's something that I need to be doing a lot more of, I wanted to kind of tune in and see if maybe there's something I can be doing better at reading. And this is where he kind of puts those two ideas at the forefront. So stick around if you want to hear how to improve at reading. Also, make sure to check out the video by Justin Sung. It should be popping up somewhere on the screen. You can just go type in how to get better at reading or how to remember everything you read. So make sure to check it out. But here are the main 2 points. The first is the consumption period, and the second is the digestion period. And I realize that I have been living in the consumption mode for far too long. And let's be honest, most of us are consuming way more than ever. We scroll through Instagram Reels, TikTok, we binge YouTube videos, Netflix series, we skim articles, we probably highlight half a book, and it feels productive. We think to ourselves, man, I'm learning so much. But here's kind of the hard truth. Just because I've read and seen it doesn't mean I remember it, and even if I remember it, it doesn't mean it actually made my life better in any way. And that kind of hit me, just because I was falling into this passive loop of taking in information and not really doing anything with it. And what Justin pointed out is that if we don't actively digest what we consumed, we lose it. It's like eating a full meal and then just spitting it out before your body can actually do anything with the calories and energy it just ingested.
Time to carbo load.
And this is the same way that I felt in a lot of my college classes, and a lot with how our public education system is set up. I could almost guarantee that if I had to take the finals for my college classes again, right now, I'd probably flunk most of them, because that is what I was doing when I was studying. I just needed to remember it long enough to take the test, pass the class, and then I could move on and cram something else in there. And all of that was just to get my fancy piece of paper that says, hey, I can learn things and remember things and put them down on paper. So what does digestion actually mean when it comes to learning and reading? For me, it was about slowing down, as explained by Justin. After I take something in, I need to start thinking about it and applying it into my life, maybe creating some analogies around that, instead of just instantly moving on to the next podcast episode or video. I've had to start sitting down and actually grappling with what I'm actually taking in. What does this actually mean for me? Where have I seen this in my own life, and how could I use this idea today? I think a lot of us watch people like Smarter Every Day or Mark Rober, these huge educational and also very entertaining videos. They explain concepts that make it a little bit easier to understand. But do we actually remember what we're actually being taught? Because this was kind of a big shift for me from before. I thought remembering information was kind of the goal, but Justin said something that kind of has been sticking in my head since. What goes into your brain is much less important than what actually stays in your brain. And I was like, man, that's true. I've had hundreds of great ideas go in. Well, maybe great is the operative word, but hundreds of ideas come in, and almost all of them disappear within a day if I don't do anything with them. And he gives a nice mathematical example. Let's say you read on average 12 books a year, but you only remember about 1/10 of what you actually learned. Meaning we're only able to remember about 1.2 books of information. We put in 12 books of work, but we're only really retaining 1.2. And even if we increase the amount we read, let's say we read 24 books a year, we still only remember 2.4 books a year. But if we increase that retaining the information, we can learn a little less and hopefully remember and retain twice as much. Meaning that if we only read 10 books a year because we're spending a little bit more time understanding and digesting that information, we actually retain 2 books a year. A bigger increase, and it's 2 less books. And one of the things that has really helped me kind of digest information a little bit better is talking to other people about what I'm learning. Kind of like this show, as well as just in casual conversations. After watching a video, I start planning on how I want to teach it to other people if it's applicable. I start thinking about how I can apply it in my own life and maybe start chatting about it with my family. Talking about it allows me to better understand it and actually formulate it into words instead of just thoughts. If you can't teach it to somebody, you probably don't understand it enough yet. So I started talking a lot more about what I'm actively learning and trying to understand, and especially in the area of digital marketing, which I'm trying to get better at. In the blog and newsletter that I've kind of started up, talking about the different ideas that I have. And when I start talking to people about these things, it takes those random thoughts that are just kind of floating somewhere in my head and turns them into real concrete things. It turns a passive moment into something that's actually active. So I've started doing the same thing with books. When I'm reading, I really try to explain the concept and teach it out loud, even if it's just myself. When I'm typing up a script, I try to make it understandable so that anyone can kind of grasp of it. And this is something that's been true for a lot of my life. When you have different ideas about career, business, goals, whatever it may be, if it's just floating around in your head, it's not really real. Not until you write it down and maybe make something of it. Another awesome tip that Justin gave in his video is creating analogies in order to understand something better. And this has been something that I'm working at doing a lot. And it's something that, honestly, I haven't thought about it as much, but I actually am probably using analogies more now than ever. Our brains kind of remember things best when they're linked back to something we already know. So if it's new information, it can already be tied back to something we already understand. That link between these things allows our brains to better store and recall that information when we actually need it. For example, think of your brain as this massive spider web. Every new idea is like adding a new thread, but if you don't actually connect it to anything, it just floats off and probably breaks off the web entirely and disappears until it gets caught in someone's face as they're walking down the street and they do this move, you know. You know that one. So when we learn something new, we have to ask ourselves, what does this remind me of? Where else have I seen this in my life? Try to tie it back to something that you already have had happen or maybe is already going on in your life. And there's honestly something kind of scary about how easy it is to just stay in that passive mode. It's really like junk food for the brain. Instagram Reels, TikTok, YouTube, endless scrolls, endless videos. You take it in, it feels good for the moment, you feel like you've actually done something, and then it disappears. You can't even remember what you watched the next day. I mean, think about it. What Reels have you watched today, and can you recall any of them? Can you recall 5 of them? I probably couldn't. I probably couldn't show you the Reels that I watched today. And I'm not saying to just totally stop watching content. I mean, here you are watching this, hopefully. But the difference, at least for me, is what happens after the video ends. How are you going to reflect on this? How are you going to apply it? Even if you just share the idea with a friend. That's kind of the digestion period that we need to focus a little bit more on, in my opinion. So here's my new approach, at least what I'm going to be trying to do over the next few months. It's still a work in progress, but hopefully it'll help you out too. Pause after learning something new. Give myself some space to try to reflect and maybe tie it back to a previous experience, or maybe create some kind of analogy to hopefully help me remember it and use it later in life. Number 2, explain it to someone else. Even if it's just yourself, try to put it into words and formulate it into something that hopefully someone else can understand. If you can't really explain it simply, you probably don't understand it enough and need to do a little bit more learning and a little bit more digestion. Number 3, connect it back to your life. Where does this fit into your life and why? Is it something that is important and maybe something you should be holding on to? Number 4, create new analogies and challenge the ones if they're bad. The effort to make sense of something strengthens the learning. As you challenge these ideas and analogies, maybe try to improve them in some way, you better retain and recall that information when you need it. And number 5, use it, apply it, do something with that information, create some small engineering thing from Mark Rober, or maybe take a look at something and find that curiosity in your own life like Smarter Every Day. It's not perfect and I still fall back into old patterns, but I'm starting to feel the difference. I remember a little bit more and hopefully apply a little bit more to improve my life. Most importantly, I use more. The other thing you should start to notice is that as you learn these things, they kind of become more apparent in your life. For me, whenever I learn a new word, I start hearing it in my favorite TV shows, in music, in books. I start seeing it in different places. It's like when you figure out what car you want or car you're going to buy, suddenly everyone is driving that same car. You start noticing it more and more as you try to remember it and apply it into your life. So if you've been feeling like you're learning a lot, but you're not really getting much out of it, maybe it's not about learning more. Maybe it's about digesting your information just a little bit more. Huge shout out to Justin Sung and his video for helping me kind of grapple with this and kind of better understand it in a way. And thanks to you for hanging out with me while I've tried to figure out how this all fits into my life. If this helped you or maybe sparked some thoughts or ideas, I'd love to hear them down in the comments and make sure you do something with them. Take a second to kind of reflect on what you've actually learned and hopefully find a way to actually apply it into your life. What's one idea you've learned recently that has actually been useful? Maybe a life hack that you could share with me. I don't care. Put something down in the comments below. Of course, if you enjoyed this episode, you'd probably enjoy some of the other episodes that I've created, which is hopefully going to appear right here. Also, make sure to check in with the mycareerpathpodcast.com website and sign up for the newsletter. I try to send them out with each video just to kind of put them in your email and hopefully give you something to read and maybe digest a little bit more. Till next time, I'll catch you guys later. See ya.